It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Monday, August 21st, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another week together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We got 2G Talks with Eddie Kweon, the Sunday Message Word Study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? And how was your weekend? Yes, wonderful Sunday message. Well, more than wonderful. It was deep. Like the shimjung was super deep in it. And man, like some of the things are getting to a point where like Sunseem's talking like this during the Sunday message, which is pretty crazy. But I'll get into that during the Sunday message word study. But if you haven't yet, go ahead, leave a like and comment to build our community. Just super happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up and support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday message, there's like a million titles. Once again, learn from me comes, learn from me is like the key one. Be perfect like God. Those who speak and act without checking, if you don't stop, all the harm will go back to you. That is a pretty crazy title, guys. Like even when I was, you kind of like the first like learn from me. It's like okay, got it. Okay, be perfect. Okay, I've heard this before. Then it's like check or all the harm goes to you. I'm just like what? Like it makes you think, what kind of message has a title that if you don't check, all the harm will go to you? I was kind of like, oh my goodness. I know what, it wasn't like I knew what was gonna be said. It's like we're in store for a pretty it's gonna be, how the words of God are the parables for the word is like fire and sword and all that stuff. But in the Bible it says the word is a staff. Like a staff is what you use to guide and lead the sheep, but it's also a rod to punish. And I could just see like, oh, the rod is coming today. And I was shocked by some of the things Sunseem was talking about because we're not in Korea. We have no idea exactly what is going on, but I was really, really shocked. And some of the things just make absolutely no sense to me. And yeah. I can't imagine what's happening in Korea, but when I heard some of the stuff like, give me back my offering, like that kind of stuff, I was just like, man, Koreans like are doing that where they leave and then they're like, give me my offering back. Like, that is so, I don't know. I'll have to talk about it later. When I think about that, it's so petty. It's more than petty. Just when I think about that, it's just so odd to me. Like, I'm going to talk like just from like, even like, a benefit analysis of paying tithe. Number one is it's like it's tax deductible. So regardless of what you paid, you're getting it deducted from your taxes, right? So there's a benefit right there. The second benefit you have, or like something else, if I'm talking purely physical, because people who leave, they're not thinking spiritually like what I benefited from it. But if I think purely physical, you're using the church, you're using the different things that you're using like the electricity and the water. They're gonna refill the toilet paper, just like so many things that you're actually using that if you were in a regular situation, you would be paying rent anyways kind of thing, right? So even for me, I'm just like, man, there's so many benefits from it that would just be fair to just, kind of just go your way kind of thing. It's not like you were taken for granted and you got nothing from it. You got tax deductions, plus on top of it, you were using a facility, right? And of course, no one's forcing anyone to do tithing. Do you know why? Because we heard it in the message today. Only 35. I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed when I heard only 35% are paying tithes. I was embarrassed because I come from Christianity where it's so normal. And I don't know. Forget it. Sorry, guys. My rant has already gone on even before I started the podcast, right? Okay. Oh, let me start off with a dream I had on Friday. So, I didn't talk about this during the Friday podcast, but on Friday, I had this crazy dream. So, I don't know what was happening inside my dream. It was very, very real. So, there was some event going on. Sunsteam was there, and like when I looked at Sunsteam, I just like in my heart, I had this urging to tell him something. So I said, "Oh, Sunsteam, I have something to tell you." And here's the thing: this is how real the dream was. You know that in dreams, a lot of times in dreams, like you communicate through the heart, like everything you want to say, you can say, right? But this dream was so real that I had to use the Korean that I knew. Like even what I know right now. Like I'm not perfect in Korean. Like I can, I'm good conversation. I can live in Korea if I wanted to. But I was just like, I was like really picking out my words carefully, and I was using the Korean that I knew. So it felt so much more real. And I was like, "Oh, Sunsteam, can I tell you something?" And he nods his head, and we ended up being in a room one-on-one. So guys, this is a dream, okay? And I just looked at him, and I just apologized. I apologized for, not being my best. I apologized for not doing the right things, right? And it wasn't even in a lot of words. I just kind of like said, ever since the pandemic, I just want to apologize. It wasn't my best. And his facial expression, he was surprised. Like you could see the surprise in his face, but you can also see that he was moved. And I was just sincerely telling him like how sorry I really was. And it's like we were in a room together. He sat down in front of me, and he was just genuinely listening to me with love and interest. And he never said a word, but you could just read it off of his face, like how happy he was. And right after that, I woke up, and it was so crazy because, like I said, it didn't feel like a dream. Like I was using the language I knew. Like when normally I have dreams and I see Sunsteam, we talk, and we're just talking the same language. I can express everything that I want. But in this dream, it was so real that I was using the Korean that I knew, that I was, that at my level. And when I woke up, it was so incredible. And it was like a lucid dream. I knew everything I was doing. It was so purposeful. And I was just so happy after that. I was. I'm sure you guys would be too. If it was just so unreal to the point that you're like, "Whoa, that was a dream," kind of thing, right? And so that I had that dream, and I since then I've just been really thankful and really happy that I had that dream. It almost feels, not almost, it felt like, that is that is God's response to my prayers and the things that I've been praying and repenting about too, especially at this time of repentance too. So I was so moved. I was in the dream, I was in tears, but when I woke up, I wasn't in tears, but you kind of sit there stunned by this dream. Like it was so spiritual. So for me, that was one of the most incredible things that just happened. And that was on Friday. Friday is what day again? I'm just going to see if it was anything meaningful. Well, of course it's meaningful, but Friday was the 18th. August 18th. I don't know if that means anything, but 8/18, 8/18. No idea. But I had that dream. I was very, very inspired and very moved. Those of you guys out there too, when I testified about Sunsteam in Europe on Friday, I believe, I am very grateful and thankful for all you guys out there that are texting me, DMing me, some people leaving me voice notes and such. And I'm really, it just shows the power of testimony. And I've been having some calls lately too of people who are coming back to life, they say. They're like, "Oh, we're listening to the podcast and you really, really helped us out for this and that. And I'm really coming back to life. I'm getting that first love back again." And when I hear that, I am so inspired and thankful to God. Excuse me. And I thought to myself, this is so worth it, what we're doing here on this platform. It really, really is. And it makes me really think about why God inspired me to start this in the beginning, why the Holy Spirit was really in my heart, like, start it now, 3/16, 2019, and boom, it goes. Is it 2019? 2020, sorry, 2020, I believe. Yeah. So yeah, it's just interesting to be able to see how far we've come, how far we've developed as a community, and how much even when I look at the comments, that we're really able to we've really provided a community where people can feel like they can say everything they want to say. You know what I mean? Like it feels like people are able to not feel like they're being judged, but they're feeling like, yeah, I can say this on here. Oh, could you please answer this question for me? I'm not really sure about this either. So yeah, I'm just so thankful to God. God is so good to all of us, and yeah, it's incredible. Oh, by the way, did you guys watch the protest on Sunday? I couldn't believe it. The place where they not where they made the reservation to do the protest, packed. It was so packed. They had to send all the other people to different parts of the area. But guess how crazy it is? They said 50,000 people came to this protest. Now, the thing that makes this so amazing to me is I didn't even know there were 50,000 members in Korea. I didn't. I had no clue there were 50,000 members in Korea. Like, I honestly thought that 50,000 was the number for all of Providence in the entire world. But now we're coming to find out that there's at least, and it's more than 50,000, because if it's 50,000 there on the Sunday for the protest, I talked to some friends who posted on Instagram that they're watching it from their homes and such, supporting, because I saw 1,000 people online just on one of the platforms. There was multiple YouTube platforms that were showing the protest. I think 4 I saw. One was an actual news outlet, which is pretty cool and cool too, but 50,000 guys. It just gives me so much power to understand wow, we have more than 50,000 in Korea. Incredible. And they all came to Seoul for that protest. This means the government has to be looking out, has to listen to us too. And yeah, I looked at that. I was like, wow. It feels like that was a massive turning point. Remember we first heard 15,000 and then all of a sudden it said 10,000. But now, then I saw when I was watching it live, it said 30,000. And then the later report said 50,000. So I am so proud of us. I really am. Guys, we got to pray. We got to pray for turning points, for the situation to turn around. Everyone, it just feels like in the past we were always passive and defensive, but now we are on the offensive. We're like, you know what? You guys can't mess with us anymore. We're not some small church, right? We're not some hidden church that is going to run away from all the other people that come against us. And that's something that people have to recognize. And I really, really feel that if we don't understand it's just brutal, right? That, I'm not brutal, sorry. I find it, I do find it brutal that people against us think that we were just going to do things the way we did before. But now everyone is rising up. And I think that is a very powerful movement that is happening. Yeah, I am still blown away. 50,000 people, right? So yeah, write in the comments below, guys, how incredible that is, because that is. I'm gonna read the articles for Provi the media for tomorrow. But guys, it's incredible. I was shocked, blown away, everything all at once. It was. I'm just so happy that we're able to come out and just support Sunsteam, testify about him, be bold about all the trial evidence and how bad the evidence really is. And I think it's something that we're going to have to reach the next level for also, right? And this is interesting because the weekend that I had was it was twofold. I had a twofold weekend because, watching the protest empowered me. And I'm glad that's the last thing I saw. But also, I talked to some people too. And the one thing I really, there's a couple things that came to my mind because I was talking to a friend of mine, and we're talking about, there's some people I talk to that are struggling. Some people I talk to that are still in doubt and stuff. And like I said, people are going to have to go through it themselves. They're going to have to, go through what's happening in their minds on their own, basically, because it's not like people can convince them, right? And I realized how important it is to be mature. Now, what does that mean? And I realized that the maturity has to be split into two parts. Now, what does that mean? we need to be both mentally mature and spiritually mature. And I thought to the reason why I thought deeply about this is because there is a huge difference between the two, and you have to have both. Now, what does that mean? So let me give an example. For instance, with like AJ and stuff, and she left, and then I kind of get to, I talk to people and I see how they react to what she did and how she left and stuff. And when people's thoughts are not mature, they get really extreme. Like some people say, oh, that means everything she did was wrong. The Holy Spirit movement was wrong. The rapture is not real. And they kind of go way extreme, like overboard, right? And this is where it kind of came to me, where I thought to myself as, man, you know what? There really needs to be maturity mentally and spiritually. Right? So what's the difference between the two? Because I was thinking about this, listening to certain people talk about like, oh, well, what's going on? Like their thoughts go so extreme. And I thought about this, like, man, we should be mature. And in my head, when I think about being mature, like usually, this is what my original thought was. Mature is being able to handle the situation, right? Reasonably, rationally, properly. So when something crazy comes up, kind of like this week's message, you should be checking it first before you react to it, before you let your emotions go, oh my gosh. Like I've heard some people react to Sunsteam's the charges against Sunsteam, and they freak out not because they've checked. They freak out because there's something emotional, like something that's so shocking to them, like a minor. Oh my goodness, how could Sunsteam do that to a minor? Like when they just they flip out. Right? And for me, that is a lack of mental maturity. It really is. Because to check it doesn't mean you talk to the person and then whatever they said, you 100% believe, because that's not mature either. A mature person is going to really check to see. They're going to kind of stand back and say, whoa, what's going on here? And this is kind of like what we did, guys, right? As being mature in this history, in March, even on this podcast, every time we talked about the situation, what do? We're like, everyone, calm down. Just wait for more information to come out. We don't know if it's true or not. And since, they're the ones accusing, they have the burden of proof to prove, to give absolute evidence that what they're saying is true, right? And we wait on it, right? We wait on it. It's like, yeah, okay, let's see what happens. Can you prove it? And until you prove it, Sunsteam's my man, right? He's innocent. And even until this time right now, people can say whatever they want. People say things to me like, oh, if you knew what I knew. And the answer is, well, if you know something that is so like blatantly mind-blowing, why would you keep it to yourself? So for me, it's like, if it's that like dire, just say it. Bring it out to the open. Right? But it's like, the thing for me is mental maturity is the first thing, right? But I realize what the spiritual maturity is, right? Because I realize that being like waiting on the information, waiting for evidence, being calm, being rational, reasonable, that is a mental maturity. But I also realize that people who are mentally mature, right, they can handle the situation well, but they are not spiritually stable, spiritually mature. What happens? Well, because they're not thinking, they're not spiritually mature. What happens? They don't know the history very well, right? They don't know the stories of sons. They don't know all the things that happened. They don't know how big and how valuable the words of God, all the things that we've heard, how powerful the word is, right? Then what's going to happen is, because they're not mature spiritually, even though they handle things mentally mature and they sound like they're doing things the right way and they're very calm about it, because they're spiritually immature, they have no choice but to doubt, because they can't really figure it out. Like, oh, well, what about, oh no, this could be true. And they begin to doubt themselves, right? And what I realize is, like, even if you're mentally mature, you'll handle the situation well, but because you're spiritually not mature, you're not going to be able to figure out and discern what is right and what is wrong. You just can't. You can't figure it out, right? Because I've seen some people. I know one person I talked to too. I've been helping them out and talking to them for the past 2 years. 2 years. Right? On what is happening in their life, all the things that are happening, right? And the things that they struggle with. And that's fine. Struggling with something is fine. It is fine. But the one thing that is not fine, I do think something that people have to, what I find disingenuous is, if someone's been struggling for 2 years And then all of a sudden they bring up something that happened right now and says, well, if you can't explain this, then how can I really believe, right? And I sit there like going, put it this way. Like, let's talk about something that's irrelevant. Okay, what about, this is a big thing that a lot of people talk about is, well, but didn't Sunseem deny his mission like just a couple months ago, right? So people are like, oh, he denied his mission, oh my goodness, right? Now, here's the thing. Let's pretend you've been in Providence for like 20 years, 15 years. So you went through 2008 and you know, Sunseem said the exact same thing in 2008, okay? So if that's really a problem, then you should have a problem in 2008. But some people I see, they don't have a problem in 2008, but they only have a problem now. So is that the real issue, or is there an underlying issue? And this kind of brings that underlying issue out even more into the light. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you really think that this is the issue, Sunseem denying his mission is really, really the issue, and you were here in 2008, then that should have been an issue too. It should have been an issue back then if it's really the issue. But it's disingenuous to say that it's an issue now, but it wasn't back then, which means that there's something else that's happening in their life or something that they're dealing with that makes this an issue that it wasn't before, right? And I think that's the thing that people need to deal with. And this kind of one of the things that I had a conversation with a friend last night, and it was kind of like, yeah, you know, why do people doubt all of a sudden, or why do people all of a sudden start to shake or start to doubt Sunseem and such? And the answer is, it's something that's already been there. It's already been there. How do I know? Well, if I look at even the former faith, right? The former faith that is strong and thriving. If anyone says anything about Jesus, what do you think they'll say? And guess what? They're straight up, get out of my face. I don't care what you say, right? So if someone comes to me and says, oh, you're so biased, you're so this, you're so that. For me, I'm like, well, it's kind of biased, but you got to think about this. It's not blind. It's not blind at all. Then what's it based on? It's based on the word that blew my mind away. The words, the 30 lessons, when I first heard it, I was blown away to the point I was like, what? It was so powerful. It was so powerful that when I heard those words, I couldn't deny the history. I couldn't deny the history. Then I meet Sunseem. Then I see the miracles. Then I see all these things happening. And I'm just like, everything supports this is the history of God. This is absolutely the history of God. So if I've come to the conclusion that this is the history of God, then just like at the time of the New Testament in the early Christian church, no matter how much persecution, no matter how many people slandered, no matter how many people accused or whatever it is, they understood 100% it is the history of God, right? So for me, it's not like, oh, I'm going to say that I am biased in a sense that I already believe this is a history of God because I've seen enough. I've heard enough. I've seen the signs. I've seen the miracles. I've met Sunseem. Everything I've seen to 25 years in this history. And for me, it's just like, yeah, it's the history of God. It is. It's the history of God. And that's why for me, whenever people say stuff, it's like, hey, this is not, and people say to me like, oh, that's so unfair because it means you don't believe these people. And the answer to them is this. Are you going to say the same thing about Christians? Would you say the same thing about Christians where everyone starts saying bad things about Jesus and such? And if they said bad things about Jesus, and if people stick to Jesus, would you say the exact same thing to them? No, they wouldn't. They'd be like, oh, but that's the faith. And that's what it is. We're in a faith, right? We need to have like mental and spiritual maturity. Because if you're only spiritually mature, the problem is that the mental maturity makes you become emotional and then you start to make the wrong decisions, right? So mental maturity is the calm, listening first, checking things out, taking things, rationally, reasonably, responsibly, right? So if you only have spiritual maturity and you know about this history and you believe it, yet when these crazy things come out, these tribulations, hardships, and all these crazy things come out, because you can't handle it mentally mature, you get all emotional, and that will sway the way you actually believe spiritually because you're emotionally compromised. And on the flip side, even if you handle it really well maturely mentally, However, if you're spiritually not mature, then you're going to be stuck like, oh, well, let's take a look at this and let's just wait. Let's wait until the very end and see which one is really that right. And that's the issue we face is you can't be just mentally mature and you can't be just spiritually mature. You need to have both. We really, really do. Like, here's the thing that I bring up to you guys, right? You can see it already right now. Remember what Sunsim talked about in the very, very first half of history? Since we're already talking about Sunsim saying that he's not the one, right? This is the third time. So in the first half of history, he did that too with the church that was just growing. I'm not sure how many people. It was like 50 or more people, something along that line. And what happened? Sunsim took them individually into a room, one by one, and told each and every one of them, I am not the one, right? I am not the one. And what happened, right? It was the vast majority of them, like 90-something%, like of all those people, only 2 people remained, he said, right? So that's only 2 people remained. So the question I give to all of us now is, are we mentally and spiritually mature enough to handle even that situation? That's the thing I bring up to you guys. Are you mentally and spiritually mature to handle it? Because those that are not mentally mature are going to freak out. What? You're not? Oh my gosh, what have I done with my life? All the offering I gave, all this I did, putting my life, and then they'll just leave, right? Even though they heard the word, even though like they're going to be compromised emotionally. But on the flip side, if you're mentally mature and spiritually mature, you'll be like those 2 people that said, whatever, I've heard the word, I've seen what you've done, and there's no way I'm leaving your side. Which one would you be? That's the real question. Would you be on this side or that side? And that is something that we have to really think about is, imagine in that situation, where would you go? Which side would you be on, right? Imagine that happened today. If the exact same thing happened, would you stay or would you go? And I'm going to tell you this right now. For everyone who is still here after all the craziness of March, I am pretty much like 99% sure that you guys would all stay. Right? I'm pretty sure you guys would already, just the fact that you're still here, you probably would stay. You'd probably stay. Right? When we look at this week's message, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, to those that are faithful, God shows himself faithful. One of the things is it really depends, how you see God is dependent upon you. When your faith is absolute, when you absolutely believe by the words that you heard, when you absolutely believe because you've seen the signs, because you've met Sunsim, then you see God is good and it does good to you, right? And this is why, it's interesting because I was talking to a friend the other day, it's like, it's so sad, all these people that are leaving. But technically speaking, when you think about it, it's kind of like, this tribulation was told it was going to come. And whatever you've done until this point is all going to show up. In the time of tribulation, all that is going to show up. There's already something they're struggling with, already something that they're shaky with, right? The real issue is not about what is happening right now. Nothing to do with, Sunsim said this about his mission. Could Sunsim possibly? No. It's about the fundamental aspect of your faith, right? And it really reminds me too of when Sunsim said this. Sunsim said this in the past. He says, if a professional soccer player, all they do is practice and never have a game, eventually they're not going to take it seriously. They're going to be really lazy. Because what's the point of practicing? Practicing is you practice for the sake of the game, so you could do well in a game. That's the whole point. But he also said, in the same way, why are we trying to make ourselves? Why are we trying to pray better? Why are we trying to connect more? Why are we trying to make ourselves and improve and change the parts about us each and every day in this history? Because the time of the game is going to come, and that's 2023. We had all this time in the past for the last 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 21 years. And that's all practice for this last moment. Everyone had the fair shot. Everyone had that chance to make themselves. Everyone had that fair chance to become better, right? Everyone had that fair chance. And some people did well and some people didn't. It's just, we all got the same word. Some people stopped going to pre-dawn. Some people stopped going to church. Some people don't listen to the message very well. Some people don't care about the word anymore. Which means when 2023 comes, it's obvious what will happen to them. It's obvious. And this is why we have to look at ourselves and we need to work on two parts. The mental maturity comes from our experiences in this world. Now, how does the experience in our world make us more mature? When we go through difficulties more and more, we realize that all difficulties are pretty similar. And eventually, you just need to wait for more information to come out. And because you have that experience, because you have that wisdom that comes from your experience, you become more mentally mature and you start to see things you've already seen before. It's like, oh, I've seen this before. Okay, let's just handle it like this. Just like any job. In any normal job too, the exact same thing happens. If someone's been through their job many times, what happens to them? Yeah, they realize, oh yeah, I've seen this before. Okay, I've seen this before, right? And in the same way too, we have to realize that we have to be those that that learn from our experiences. Like for me too, when Sunseem, people are like, oh my gosh, Sunseem said this about his mission. I was like, hey, I've heard it in 2008. And Sunseem talks about it in the first half of history too. It's not like we haven't been through this before. We haven't. Oh, okay. Oh, the second charge, AJ leaving, that happened 1999. Oh, really? Does that mean it's predestined? And the answer is no. Those things aren't predestined. It's just a matter of human responsibility if they did what they're supposed to do, right? Just like us in life too, if we do our responsibility, we'll be blessed. If we don't, we're not going to be blessed. And because I've been through those things, it's easier for me to tell people, hey, let's be reasonable, rational. We don't have all the information yet. Let's wait to see what other information comes out. And now look at us. We're at a position where we've gotten so much more information than before that we're even more confident in our faith. We're more confident, right? So if anything, guys, we need to work on that mental maturity, going through our experiences in life, learning through them, and applying it to the future difficulties we have. And the spiritual maturity is like this week's message: learn from Him. Learn from the Lord. Learn from Jesus, right? Through the man of mission. And the more solid we become in the history, more solid we become in faith, this is where we're going to be mature, as in all these people saying this and that. And you know what? It doesn't faze us, right? But what do we need? We need both mental maturity and spiritual maturity, right? Because both of those combined will bring us as people who are absolutely rock solid, all right? So yeah, it's a great weekend, amazing weekend, a lot of good realizations, a lot of things that have happened. I hope you guys enjoyed it too, and I hope that you guys comment about that too, about the mental and spiritual maturity, and kind of rate yourselves too. Like, are you both mentally and spiritually mature, or is there one side you need to work on more? All right. Yeah, great weekend. Oh, either way, so let's get into this first break of the day. right, so let's get into today's word study. And every single Monday we do have the Sunday message word study, and what a powerful message it was. It was, man, like I was saying in that first segment, those who speak and act without checking, if you don't stop, all the harm will go back to you. Like, man, that is pretty crazy. Like I said, I was shocked. I was really, really shocked. Like, whoa, like what kind of message is going to have, like what kind of message is this, right? And when you listen to it, it just got stronger and stronger. And this is one of those messages where, you know, it's not about you. In most cases, you're like, oh, that's not about us kind of thing, right? But, you know, because it's very, very specific. Sunseem's talking about like posting online and stuff. So if you're not doing posting online, I'm pretty sure that this message, that part of the message is not about you, right? Of course, Miniaturize is talking about, you know, don't speak and act without checking. Are you spreading rumors and stuff like that too? But let's just, let's go a little bit deeper. Like, yeah, great message. And I was blown away by it. Yeah. And like that first part of the message in Psalm chapter 18, verse 25, I loved it because that's one of the things that I do think that we have to realize about people, right? God shows himself according to how they are, right? Like the words of Psalm chapter 18, 25, right? That to the righteous, he shows himself righteous. Like, one second, let me, oh, darn it. I didn't bring my phone with me. Okay, either way. Right, so my phone is here somewhere, but I was going to take a look at the Bible verse, but it's like, you know, to the righteous, he shows himself righteous, to the fair, he shows himself fair, right? And to the wicked, you know, he becomes a little bit more harsh on them, right? And it's all based upon you. It's like that first part of the segment, I was like, yeah, if people already have problems, if they already have things wrong with their faith, what does that mean? It means that they're going to struggle with it they've been struggling with this even before March. Right? And these things will kind of exacerbate what they're already struggling with, which also means that if they're already struggling with it, yeah, they're going to go through even more difficult time until they fix that fundamental issue. These words are never going to change. How you are is how you see God, and you project because of yourself what you think about God. Right? Like if people think even without looking at all, like if there's not even real proven evidence, but it's just people saying that this happened, then you have to understand that that's your thinking. It really is. Because you think that because someone said this, then this person must be guilty. But isn't that that's like the thing that we're trying to get rid of? This is why we even started court systems in the first place, so that people wouldn't judge upon they wouldn't judge biasly, saying that, oh, well, I like this person. I don't like this person, so it must be true. I like this person, so it must not be true. It's based solely on evidence. Because, yeah, if there's no evidence, then anyone can say anything about anyone all the time, right? And this is why, you know, this is what is happening right now, is not only the people saying stuff against Sunseem right now, but it's also we are going against each other. And the message is it's pretty clear, right? Jealousy and envy, right? It causes us to hate each other, and it causes like accidents in relationships, accidents in faith to happen. It's the jealousy and envy. And I think that this is something that all of us have to really think about. Like, let me give you, if I were to give you an honest assessment of every single church in the world, 100%, there are always going to be, there's always going to be people that cause a lot of problems. They don't even think they're causing problems, but they're the one causing tons of problems between them and other people. And they're always thinking that, oh, but, you know, why are they like that? But, you know, you got to think about this. If more than one, if 2, 5, 10 people are all hurt, or you've caused problems to them, you got to think to yourself that the problem is you. Do you know what I mean? And in every church, you're going to have those people, right? I'm going to say at least in every church, you're going to have 1 to 5 of these people. And depending on how big your church is, you're going to have more and more and more. It's just natural and normal. Right? And it's not because they're bad or wrong. It's just because everyone is different. And then because of the hurt and because of the pain or whatever, all these things are happening, we start to hate each other. right? We start to say bad things about each other. Or, I've seen this happen is someone you don't like receives a mission. Someone you don't like, and I'm going to tell you this right now, this happens all the time. Wait, how come they became a star and I didn't become, haven't you guys heard that story before where someone's like, I wanted to be a fame star, but da 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 da, and then they're like, oh, how did they become a star? And the answer is people don't understand what it means. Like some people think that you have to do something. Like you have to literally oh, I worked for 20 years purifying myself, so I have to be a star. And the answer is it doesn't work that way. That's like saying this, hey, I worked so hard to marry you, but why won't you marry me? Because marriage is not about that. Marriage is about love. And this is where jealousy and envy come and we begin to hate each other. Accidents happen all the time. We begin to hate our brothers and sisters. And like 1 John chapter 3, verse 15 says, anyone who hates their brother is a murderer. And in all honesty, we do murder them. We think bad things about them. We think about what, everything that they do, everything that they get acknowledged for, we get upset about. All those things, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did. I can't believe they said this. And we have to realize and recognize that this is what's happening in the mid-tri scale in all churches. People are beginning to hate each other. When especially at this time right now, think about it, especially at this time right now, this is a time we have to love each other even more because we have so many outside forces against us. But what kills us right now is, as Jesus said, a nation divided against itself cannot stand. Providence, the nation of Providence, if we are against each other from the inside, how can we stand? And this is why there comes a point where there's no other choice but to cut off the people who are trying to divide inside the church. Eventually that happens. We can't only love the people that we're cool with, that we're friends with. We have to love everyone, as hard as that is. Because I was telling a friend the other day too, is I don't want to be the reason why someone leaves. Like, of course, there's sometimes people are leaving and they'll use you as an excuse. But sometimes we may do something to cause someone to leave. And this is something that I don't think is the right thing we should be, that's the thing that we should be embarrassed, that Sunseam receives that message like, oh, this person, I'm going to, as a leader, as someone who's been a head leader, yeah, we give people the most amount of grace from lecturing and preaching and doing stuff, but we hurt the most amount of people too. We just do, right? And it's because we are not perfect. It's because we don't do things the right way. It's because we get fed up. It's because we're tired, we're hangry, whatever it is, we end up doing things we regret doing because we're not fully made. And, I'm honest with myself too. I have said the wrong things. I have done the wrong things too. I have. And as a leader, I've probably done more than I've probably, I don't want to say it this way, but I've probably, I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but let me just say it, right? Because you're wondering, what's he going to say? I was just going to say, I've probably killed more people than most people. I probably have. Just because I'm in that position. Just like same with Sunseam too. Sunseam has, what he might say things that other people take in a different way, and he kills more people than all the other people combined. So, it's something that we have to make ourselves, we have to fix ourselves, make ourselves better. Right? God is speaking to us today, right now, through that message. And I haven't heard this type of message in a while. Because this is a message that I thought was, Sunseam talked about tithing. But of course, he kind of started by talking about if something is imperfect, then God cannot accept it. And I like this intro because it makes you think deeply about, oh, that's true. Like the Ambition Masterpiece, because it was not done properly, it crumbled 5 times. And it kept crumbling until it was made properly, right? We have to make it perfect, right? We need to do it. The crumbling of the Mission Masterpiece shouldn't discourage us. It shouldn't make us think, oh, I'm so terrible. Like this kind of what we do, right? We get disappointed, we get discouraged, we get depressed, whatever it is. But what it should be doing is it should make us want to do a better job next time. That when we realize why God does certain things, we got to kind of flip the mindset. The mindset isn't, oh God, it's 3 times it crumbled. It's not going to, we shouldn't sit there like going, oh, we're so terrible. I can't do anything. I shouldn't even be in Providence kind of thing, right? More, it should be like, oh God, it's not done the right way. All right, let's make it again. Let's make it again until it's better. I got time. I got my life to live, but we're going to do it until you like it, right? And this is kind of like the life that we live in right now is, like, I look at myself with this one thing, says there's some things that we're good at and some things we're not. I look at myself, I'm like, hey, I am very good at lecturing. I'm very good at preaching. I'm very good at these very big picture things. I am not good at the details. I am not good at like taking care of people individually and spending so much time with a single person, right? Until they come back to life. Like, that's not my specialty. Mine's more big picture, a big crowd, talking to people. So I know what I do wrong. But what God is saying is, they won't receive it if it's not perfect. It'll be left to crumble. And this is why we have to keep making ourselves more and more till it reaches a certain level. Perfectly doesn't mean 0 mistakes. Perfectly means which you have to reach a certain level, right? To be perfect for your level. And that's something I think all of us have to really think about. Like when I saw, that video of the rock landscape, wow, it looks immaculate and beautiful. That first video was just mind-blowing, like, whoa, look at Wolmyongdong. I haven't seen it in that long. It looks amazing. It looks so amazing. And I looked at that, I was like, wow. And what about the other video when it's talking about all those Bible verses about God's throne being in a high place? And all these things I didn't know about, right? Like Daejeon is the highest average elevation in Korea of all the big cities. And then if of all the areas in Daejeon, Kumsan is 4.3 times higher than all the rest of the average in Daejeon. And then in Kumsan, it is Jinsan, which is the highest village. And then the highest village in Jinsan is Seongmangni. And then the highest in Seongmangni is Wolmyongdong. And it's just like, oh, this is so crazy. 400-meter elevation. And this is why the man of mission was born there. And this is why the temple was made there too. And I liked it because it's kind of setting up. It has to be done perfectly, right? And I haven't heard a sermon on tithes and offerings. And I'm going to be super honest with you right now. I don't think I've heard one in 5 years. I think it's been 5 years since I've heard anything on tithes and offerings. Tithes, 5. I was just like, what? That's so crazy. We haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything. When you go to a Christian church, you have tithing sermons every Sunday. Every Sunday. But Providence, it's so rare. I thought, I think on average, if I was thinking like reasonably, we'll probably get one once a year. But I really feel like all throughout the pandemic, we didn't hear anything like that. Like, I don't know if you guys remember anything. Maybe I forgot. But it feels like years. That's how much we don't. That's how Sunsteam doesn't talk about tithing. And if anyone starts saying, "Oh, here's Sunsteam talking about money," and the answer is, think about it carefully. Sunsteam doesn't talk about tithing and money for so long that if anything, you should be mad at Christian churches for talking about it every Sunday. He just talks about how he gives everything to God. This is why we have all the things from the all of Wolmyongdong, building of it, all the trees, the Rapture Hall, all these other different things. We did it without any debt. And then this is where it's like some people are asking for their offerings back after leaving Providence. What a ridiculous thing. Honestly, that's one of the most, if there's people like this in Korea, that is so sad. It's so petty. It's so petty. It's so petty for me. Like are people in Korea really doing this? Like if they're gonna go into I'd be pretty shocked though if they went into a lawsuit because they're just gonna end up. It sounds like it's more like a threat, so you give it back because they're not gonna go to courts on this. The courts wouldn't even accept this. Can you imagine if that happened? You know how many people would ask for their money back after leaving their church? It makes absolutely 0 sense. 0 sense, right? Like, this tithing is a normal thing, right? And I'll say this too, is there were like months and months I didn't pay my tithes during the pandemic. And then I would be like, oh, here. And then I put like this lump sum at the end, like, oh, this is my tithing for myself. And be like, oh, okay, like, because I haven't paid in such a long time, right? But like, I think it's always best to do it every week. Always best to do it every week, because when you do it every week and you split all your, you split your whatever you get, and you split that up into, like, say, every month, then it's much easier to be giving the tithes. Like, instead of giving, like, let's say you give $250 a month, it's so much easier to remember to do it every single week. 250 would divided by 4 is what? It's like 80 something dollars a week. You know what I mean? Like, that's, and and some people, if they don't know, like, I'm sure some people don't know this, but it's not after taxes, it's gross. It's before taxes. Everything that you've earned. So if you earn $3,000, then when you take taxes off, it becomes $2,000. No, you don't pay on the $2,000, you pay on the $3,000, right? It's on the gross, right? And spiritually, the people who understand this spiritually, they understand, they'll just give, and they'll even give more. And if someone is not very spiritual, you have to think about it in a different way. You're using the church, the lights, the internet. Even if you're listening to it online, there has to be a space for that to be used. Where the podium is, all these different things, it's all being used. And that's why you give your offerings, because on top of it, it is paying for the expenses. It's paying for the internet. It's paying for the equipment. It's paying for the rental of the building or the buying of the building. It does all those things. And then on top of it, the government gives you tax deductions. Do you know what I mean? So when you think about it like this too, it's regardless of all the things that you've done in this history, yeah, you've done this much, great. Asking for it back, it just sounds like empty. It sounds like a threat that they'll go to a lawyer and do all these other different things, and then just to try to get it back. But if they don't, you think they're really going to go to court for this? Do you know how many other churches would have to give back? That'd be crazy. That'd be so crazy. Yeah. And I like what Sunseem said. He's like, think about this. If you're asking God to pay you back, then God says, well, then you pay me back for all the blessings I gave you. Yeah. Then you're going to pay for that? Because then you're in debt. And this is funny too. Don't be stingy to God, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus when you yourself are using your funds abundantly on yourself. Getting a boba, getting a coffee. I'm talking about myself, guys. Just buying these things for yourself. And that big thing, that is one of the most embarrassing things I have heard, that this is actually the providence percentage is 35%. I am shocked. I am so shocked by that. I'm serious. That is one of the most shocking things to me, is 35%. That is sad, right? Like, this is not even about, like, this is not even people who are not paying the full 10%. Like, they're only paying, like, offering on the net, not the gross. It's not about that. 35% are actually giving. 35%, right? That, for me, I'm just like, you're telling me that 65% of the people inside that church are not paying tithe? That, it blows my mind. And it's the exact same thing Sunseem said. How can you be a bride and do it like this? These are not my words. I don't understand. Like, this is the words from the message. You have met Jesus. I don't understand how only 35% give tithes. What a shame. What a shame. That's heartbreaking. Isn't that heartbreaking? It really, like, wow. Like, that's something we need to do. And I hope that we can, really change the mentality and the mindset. We got to start doing it. And I'm sure, I hope to God, at least after this message, like, it jumped to like 80, 90%. I think it's something that people have to look into their churches. But of course, money's such a sensitive thing that the only reason Sunseem's saying it now is because it's so bad. It's only 35%. And I think it's something that we have to, we have to think about, like, reset our hearts. Like, this is just a regular part of faith, that even the children and servants are doing better than us. Does that make sense, that the children and servants give better tithings than the brides? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And this is why we got to learn. Learn from the one God sends. See what he's done. Even in his poverty, even having nothing, he still gave. So I really hope that's something that we can work ourselves back up to, because that's really sad if it's like that. That's such a sad thing to see. Like, I don't think, like, I think it's really sad for God's Shimjung that he has to even bring this out in the Sunday message. And of course, this last part, I think that it was just brutal. Brutal. And we don't know what's going on in Korea. And it's possible that it could be some of us here too, doing it through gossip and such, but man, it got real about putting stuff up on the internet, putting stuff up online, talking about people at headquarters, talking about head leaders, saying such ridiculous stuff like, oh, those two lawyers are the ones that got Sun Steve in jail the first time, and now they're his lawyer again. That's I don't think anyone in the foreign countries ever thinks this. I hope not, because we're not in the thick of things like this. We don't even know that this stuff is popping up in the internet. But you can just tell by the tone of the message, it was like the last 40 minutes was all about this. Spreading rumors without knowing, without checking, And then on top of it, people reading it and then getting upset by it and saying, oh, these people, like, actually believing these rumors online. And what happens is these people that start to read this and they start to believe, or they get affected by it, their faith begins to digress. And God's like, we have to look at how serious this is. It's so serious to the point it's coming out in the Sunday message where it's like, if you keep doing this, I'm going to bring your name out. That is crazy. Like, that's how serious the situation is. And we have to understand this, guys. I'm not saying this because, like, just to say that, hey, stop doing this. I want you to feel guilty about tithing. I want you to feel guilty about that. But it's to the point where God has to even bring this out. You know what I mean? It's almost like something that's so obvious between lovers, right? That, that you want them to do something that is so obvious, but just to point it out is embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. Like, what would be embarrassing for me if someone, imagine if you're think about your husband or wife. If someone says something bad about you and they don't defend you. Oh, that's embarrassing to say, hey, honey, you couldn't defend me. That would be something I'd be so embarrassed by. I'd be so embarrassed to even say that to my wife if they couldn't. That would be, it's so embarrassing. Like, that's what it kind of feels like, is like, God, like, do I have to say this in the message about tithing and about spreading rumors online and then affecting other people? Like, that's what it felt like. And we need to get away from this, away from the jealousy and the envy. Focus on our own lives. We have so much to worry about. Even, like, I would say, even at this situation, imagine you're the only one paying tithe at church. Let's pretend you're the one person and no one else pays tithes. Even at that point, we shouldn't be complaining like, look, I'm paying for all this stuff. You shouldn't even let it get to your head because it's God's. Let God deal with it. But you shouldn't be like, oh, God is so unfair. I'm paying for all this toilet paper. I'm paying for the internet. I'm paying for all this equipment. But look at all these other people. You shouldn't be like that. Even at that point, we shouldn't even be doing that. We've got to raise our level, right? Just like the Ambition Masterpiece, it crumbles until it is built properly. And our lives too. Our finances too will crumble until we do things properly. That's what it is. Only after we learn perfectly, after we learn powerfully, right? Like even Sunseam too, he had to learn before he actually was sent out. Like I was really sad when I heard this in the message that some people hear these rumors against them and then they think that Sunseam thinks the same way about them. But Sunseam's like, come on, I will not think anything until I check completely and perfectly. And even then, I would give you another chance. That can you imagine that Sunseam has to say that to people? Oh, Sunseam, do you think badly? No, Sunseam's like, hey, even if it was true, I'd give you another chance. So this is why we have to be those that have to change, make ourselves. Without any of this, we won't be able to bear good fruit. Right? Let's uproot the rocks. Let's uproot the weeds. Let's uproot the thorn bushes so that we can make ourselves better and better. Yeah, none of us are perfect, but we got to at least make ourselves each and every day. Yeah. It was such a hard to listen to. Even when Sunseam remember Sunseam would say something like, some reports that people send to Sunseam are 90% lies. Like, come on. Like, can you really believe in something just because someone said it? Because that's how rumors spread. Oh, they did. Oh my gosh. Hey, come here. Did you hear about this? And they kind of spread it even though it's not even true. They just kind of point fingers. When you check more, right? And this is another sad part is, some of these people that are accusing, they're not even living a proper life of faith. So it's like a blind person criticizing someone they can't even really see. Yeah, it was such a sad, it was powerful, it was piercing, it was sad, and you could feel that deep shimjung in there too. Like this part is like, think about this. Like, sometimes like people embellish other people's mistakes so they look 10 times worse. Why? Because they're thinking about it all night and then they post it online in such an egregious and provocative way. But sometimes like, I don't get fooled by that kind of stuff. Don't look at those posts. Right? Don't even look at them. And I think that one of the powerful things Sunseam said is if you ever come by one of these posts, write against it and say, how could you say this? Sunseam already talked about this. How could you even write this type of thing? Take action against it. It's not just, hey, leave them alone, guys. No, Sunseam even said, if you see it online, show up. And I think that's something that, that's part of accountability, right? As a brother and sister. And, it's the same thing with you guys, with me too. I hope that's the same, that I don't come off as someone where you'll say something bad about me and then I'll be like, how dare you? How dare you say this to the sky? Like, I don't want to be like that. And of course, yes, sometimes we have certain situations going on in our life, and then on top of that, we might take it the wrong way. But ultimately, in the end, we've got to be able to understand everyone. We all go through bad days. We all have tough times. We got to say sorry, apologize to each other, and move forward, clean things up as much as we can, forgive each other. Right? And this is an important point. Forgive each other, but do not tolerate their deeds. That's a powerful point. Forgive them, but I'm not going to let you get away with this. Meaning, hey, remember, Sunseam said not to do this. I don't think it's a good idea to put this up. You know what I mean? And that's something I think that's something that we have to think about is too, just because we're tolerating them doesn't mean we allow them to just walk all over us or push us around. That's why we have these protests. 50,000 people to say, yeah, you're going to say all these things. You're not going to push us around. You don't know how big we really are. You don't know how big we are. And if we realize really deeply, even if you have good intentions, even if you're doing something for the sake of Sunseam, in the end, you're actually hurting Sunseam more than anything else. You're hurting him more. Don't slander each other, right? Check things. And you'll see that when you begin to check things, it's not as it seems. Right? So I thought, it's just something that we have to think about very carefully. And I think that's one of the big things even for myself. One of the things for myself is, like I told you guys, is I want to make sure that when I report something, I'm going to confirm it. Like I really want to do that. And of course, if it, later I find out it's not confirmed, I got to tell you guys that it's not confirmed. I got to tell you. Right? If I don't, then, I'm actually doing a disservice because you're hearing something that's wrong and I want to check, is this correct? Check with some other people in Korea. What are they saying? Okay, so this is what the actual thing is. Let me correct this for you guys. So, yeah. It was so, like I said, piercing. It was deep. It was saddening. The deep shimjung there. And this is one thing I thought that was really powerful too. It says, like, those of you writing stuff on the internet, would you write such a thing about a person if they were standing right in front of you? And the answer is, you couldn't do it. Because if that person's standing right in front of you, then you couldn't embellish. And you couldn't say things beyond what is untrue. Because they'll point like, I didn't do that. I didn't do this. And you would feel really bad. So we got to check. Do things perfectly, right? And the last result is what? If you don't do it perfectly, in the end, you take all of the punishment. Last thing that was pretty powerful to me is when Sunstein compared this time to the time of Josiah and Nico. And, the man of mission is in the position of Nico, the stronger side, right? So we're not talking about being the Gentile. We're not talking about being someone who used to be an enemy, right? We're looking at from purely symbolic. The symbolism Sunstein is using here is there is a weak side and a strong side, and the strong side is used to help the weak, right? So we need to understand that the man of mission is the Nico of this time period. And who are the Josiahs are those that wait for things to work out well, which means it's probably like us inside this history, right? Like we can look at it a little more magnified as the former faith, right? And Sunstein coming this way. But even inside this history, we have to know that Sunstein is the one that is the Nico of this time period, and the Josiahs are the ones that are supposed to be those waiting for things to work out well is us, actually. We're the ones waiting to see, are things going to work out or not? But the man of mission is there to help us. But instead, we made conflict ignorance, and we made the man of mission an enemy to us instead. Gosh, powerful message. Powerful. Like so many things were striking my heart. I was like, we got to pray, guys. We got to pray even more than we did before. Okay? So there it is. That is the word study for today. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. And if you have any comments, go ahead and leave them below. All right? So let's move into the second break of the day.
Through all the wind and the trials, still we never did break. It really wasn't very easy to put trust in that state. So even though our castles in the sand tumbled down, but all our tears streamed down together to cement the foundation. The tears would out continuously every single day, and I wouldn't hold it back because I gone through so much pain. Now I stand and shake the dust off as I cling onto your Lord is right before me. Oh Lord, you'll always be the only answer. I don't sit here wishing happiness will come round. I don't sit and wait for it to walk through my door. Happiness comes to those who take action on love. When I love with perfect faith, yeah, perfect faith. Happiness will fill my heart. When I'm faced with the roadblock, I think, what would you do? Even so, with all that thinking, I fall further in distress and agony. When I leave those thoughts behind, it's a better life. I leave my suffering and failures far behind me. You saw me struggle to chase a brighter future. While running after happiness, I turn to you, our eyes connecting. As you sweat, you flash a smile, and this is what you tell me. Let's create our own happiness, though times it may be difficult. I don't sit here wishing happiness will come round. I don't sit and wait for it to walk through my door. Happiness comes to those who take action on love. When I love with perfect faith, yeah, perfect faith. Happiness will fill my heart. I'm not afraid, Lord, you have always been the answer for me. years were once so painful and distressing. The massive waves that tore me down were scary and depressing. But though confusion, chaos, fear devoured me completely, the moment that I found you, I was spared out of the deep sea. Now all those moments in my life, no matter how I struggled, are precious and important cause they led me to our meeting. So now I'll never leave, you know my faith and love will not grow cold. And just as you have done for me, I will believe, I will love you more.
As long as I live, I pray only to look to your will. I'll offer prayers full of joy and happiness. I'll stand upon Christ as my rock. As long as I live, I pray only to look to your will. I'll offer prayers full of joy and happiness. I'll stand upon Christ as my rock. Love's always patient and kind. Love is always full of trust. Love is always full of hope. And love always perseveres. Love's always patient and kind. Love is always full of trust. Love is always full of hope. And through love we'll persevere here together.
Okay, so let's get into the final segment, and of course, it is Monday, and every Monday we have 2G Talks with Eddie Kweon. He's just doing such an amazing job, and I'm so proud of him because he's doing, he's just doing an awesome job, okay? So here's, today he has a new segment, and he actually sent it to me really early this time, and one of his friends just came back from Korea. A pastor just came back from Korea, and he's just, you know, he heard all the news about the second gens that he knew when they were younger, all growing up. They're all grown up now, and like a lot of these people are now in their 30s, and they're second gen, like they're the real older brothers. And he said it's really crazy to think that the second gen are in that stage now that they're in their 30s. And he's kind of seen how God has worked through these people for the last, 26 years to guide him also. And that also made Eddie think of all the instances and experiences, even with people he had a hard time with in the world and among his friends, but how God even used those things to guide him to be in a better place now. So I hope you guys will really enjoy this. It looks like it's a time of more of reflection, talking about the things that happened in the past, but very, very interesting. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this, all right? So everyone, all the way from San Francisco, this is Eddie Kweon with 2G Talks.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another week's episode of 2G Talks. I'm so very excited to, converse with you guys once again and to kind of share this kind of news. It's very affirming for me when I get to speak to members and they, mention different parts of this segment. Because, I think, and, I don't want to say guilty of this too, but I'm like this too. And I think, most people's psychology works in this way where we don't really leave like comments and stuff and like only when there's an opportunity to like talk in person or just kind of like share in a very natural, comfortable way are we willing to communicate about different things too. So those kind of conversations, because I had a few like over the phone and in person where people are just, talking about, of course, not just 2G Talks, but the MSD 117.8. And it's very affirming for me. It's very hopeful, and it makes me want to do better and to kind of, rethink some of the substance that I share and think about the direction going forward too. And so today, I think when I was really, thinking about what to share, at first, I typically record these very late on Saturday nights because I try to give myself a lot of time throughout the day on Saturday to try to like think of like, what I could possibly share. But today I'm recording this very early, like right after praying, because there were so many things that came up in my prayers that I think like for me kind of makes me think of the future. And I hope that in some way that it'll get each person to think of the future by like thinking about what's happened in the past and by seeing what's going in the present and kind of like putting this like full circle and kind of drawing out the entire timeline. So like what came up today was there were a couple of members who visited Korea and they recently came back to the States, and I had the chance to speak to them. And they saw a lot of people whom we've known from like a very long time ago. Like, like Western Providence isn't like super crazy big. So there's a fair chance that if you've been around long enough that you'll, meet quite a few of people that you'll continue to see, hopefully. And so, there are a couple faces who I haven't been able to see in many years. Some people who've actually helped on this segment before too. And so when I heard about their stories, I was really wondering how they're doing. And like when I was praying, the thought really came to mind, and it wasn't just to do with Providence people; it was to do to my friends and to things happening in the world. And when I really thought about all these people who like, wow, it's so crazy, right? Because this segment's about second generation, and so the time that I recall these other second gen in particular the most is when I was like in high school and middle school as an SS. But now like some of them are in their 30s, right? Like, and so it's crazy, right? Like, so it's like more than 15 like years later from when I really recall them vividly. So I was like really trying to think about like what's going on in their life, right? To think that they're 30, right? Because when I was young, there were quite a few older, brothers and sisters at church who were born like in 93, 94. That was like quite a popular year for Korean Providence, and there were like a lot of blessings couples that formed like I think in the few years before that. So there's a lot of people born in that time. So I had a lot of older sisters and brothers who were born in around those years. And so now some of those second gen are like 30, right? And some of them have older siblings too, and those older siblings are like in their 30s, well into their 30s. But then I was like, wow, like it's so crazy, like all the things that they did, like when we were growing up. And of course we were like in Providence, and so we had very Providence exclusive events in our life. But even aside from that too, of course we had very normal like teenage and like preteen experiences together. That included all that God did throughout those experiences too. But we had the same psychology and like mental state of development and like physiological development as regular kids, right? And so we like, even when I look at younger kids now, like I see like haha, like I used to be like that too. And so there were good things and there were bad things. There were like struggles and difficulties in that time. But like looking back on it now, I really realized that God led me to the right place. And like recently I've been really thinking about what providence means and like this golden path that we have, and how all of those things led to this moment, right? So and related to this, I think there's kind of like a better example to kind of shed light on this too. So this doesn't have to do with those second generation, but it was with my friends recently. Like there's a couple friends in particular that I hold very dearly, but they always never do the thing that that I feel like I want from them, right? Or need from these friends, right? These are friends that I've had since high school as well, and so they're very dear to me, and we were very close from that time, and we're still close now. But there've been like conflicts and things in that time and just experiences together that's really difficult to continue to experience things like that. But in particular, there was this one friend who I think during COVID, because I've been back and graduated from school for the past 5 years, in my mind, partially, I came home in particular because I wanted to help take care of my family, and like really, it's just hard for me to see like kind of some level of struggle in in our lives, and like want to step away, right? Or like feel like I should step away. Like I really feel like I need to be there, like in some way. To help kind of facilitate struggles and conflicts that we might have. And so it's a very difficult position to have, of course. And so I think in COVID there was like a time when like it was really difficult. It was just so difficult, and I was like, okay, for the first time I kind of felt in the back of my mind that like maybe it'd be better if I like moved out, right? And if I, could find a place. But at the time I was like trying to save money, and I'm trying to go to think of the future, to go to law school, and all of these things. So it was just so complicated, and it was just so complex, and it was just so stressful at the time. And then there was this one friend who I'm still really close to, and he had just moved out of his family's place, and his family owns a lot of property, and so he was able to move into another house that they owned, that he was that they were previously leasing out to tenants, right? But then he took it over, and he had a spare room. And there was a day that I did a favor for him, and he's kind of someone who like talks very generously when someone does something for him. Everyone can do that, but I think people in the world have a tendency to do that kind of flippantly and not follow up on the thing that they talked about and they promised. So because I did this big favor for him, like he was like, yeah, like if you need a space, you can come move into my place, stuff like that. And then so at the time, because I was struggling so much at home, I was just so like thankful that he would even offer that, right? And so like I was seriously considering it at a certain point, right? And he was even talking about like, you don't even really need to pay rent, you can just pay a little bit. And I was like, wow, like that fits perfectly, because I'm trying to save money for the future and for law school, and it's close enough to home where I can still help with the family and with church and with everything, but I can still have my own space, right? And it was so close to my workplace too. I was like, I don't even think I really need a car, because that's one thing that I needed when I was working, and I was like, wow, like this is so perfect. But within the span of like a few weeks, a few months, like his like tone changed. So he didn't outright say no, but he kept kind of dropping hints. And I don't know whether he was doing this intentionally for me. And it's not something I really want to like go down the rabbit hole of finding out. But I was just so hurt because he like started dropping hints that he really wants to live alone, right? And so at the time, and even up until recently, I was kind of very like upset internally about that. And I was like, wow, like and actually it kind of culminated recently, because even though he said all of those things to me recently, one of our other friends ended up moving in with him, right? So when that happened, I was like a little bit irked again, right? Because I had forgotten about it, but then like when it happened, like in my mind I was like, wow, like so then like like I would just, yeah, it just felt like a betrayal, right? And of course I was happy for this other friend who moved in, because he really needed it too, but it was like just so terrible. But then the more I was like praying about it, and I knew this too, but it just took some time to process. The more I was like praying about it, I was thinking like, if I had moved into my friend's place and pursued that path and the things that path entailed, it was a more physical, it wasn't supposed to be a physical path, but I think it would have led to a more physical path. And the biggest thing for me is I don't think I would have been able to realistically go to Hawaii, that I was able to do for like 6-7 months. I wouldn't have been able to do many things, and I would have been more closer to my friends in the world. And it's not that I'm not close now, but I think it just wouldn't have been the path that God would have wanted me to go to. And so, of course I knew that I needed to be thankful, but it was in particular when I was praying and I was like reflecting on these second generation brothers and sisters who I am thankful for, and all the Providence members who I'm thankful for, who I think the Holy Spirit has used clearly to move me in a different way according to Providence, according to God's path, like that. It made me feel gratitude towards people who kind of maybe at the time seemed like they wronged me, right? Or they made me feel like this kind of anguish, right? But then I was like really like reflecting on that and realizing that like, wow, even people like this and even instances like this, God used to take me to the right path, right? So like, how can I sit here being bitter if I was able to go to a better path as a result of this not happening? Right, and as a result of someone treating me in this way too. So in fact, in some weird way, I feel more gratitude towards them, right? And I think this is something that's only possible in Providence, that only we can feel, because we're constantly practicing this act of being grateful, not just towards people but towards God, right? Because that's ultimately who is guiding all of these things, right? And so that's something really that I'm thinking about in terms of for the future and for like all of this too, right? Like that we have to even be thankful. Of course, this person isn't my enemy, but I can come up with plenty of times of people who like intentionally wronged me and who I like harbored like kind of this negative feeling towards for a long time. But even those people, they led me to the path that God wanted me to go to. And so more than anything, I was like thankful to God, and I was like kind of really opening up, the possibility of God working in my life no matter what happens, right? And I think, today's morning message was really powerful in that sense too. As a final note, kind of wrapping this up, I think this is something that I've been doing. Recently, I saw that same friend again. We went to go watch Oppenheimer. And, when we were having dinner, one of the things that they mentioned, because we had kind of a new friend joining, and they were like asking, they were talking about various things, and like, so I gave some advice to this new person. And this old friend, the same friend that I'm talking about with the housing situation, he was saying like, yeah, you should actually listen to Eddie because Eddie gives good advice, right? And it's the first time I heard him say that in a very long time of anything of that kind. But yeah, so we were joking around, and so I kind of retorted back. I was like, yeah, but no one listens to my advice, right? And he started laughing, and he was like, yeah, it's true, but he does give good advice. So I was actually very thankful for that too. And like on that on that note too, I think one thing that I've been doing is, of course, in Providence, we try to be very organized, and we try to kind of do the thing that God would want us to do. And I think, but one thing that I've developed that's, I think, different from the world and from many people too, is that of course we're organized and we have plans and we have these things, but like, because I saw that God works even through my enemies, even through these friends who don't understand me in these various situations, that I consciously leave a lot of room for God and for the Holy Spirit to direct me in a certain way, right? And so even within my plans. And so when I normally I stress out about like these minor details, like if things just aren't going perfectly, I used to really stress out about it. But even my friends during this dinner time, they remarked, I was like, yeah, Eddie, actually you've been like so much more chill. Because before, right, like even when we're gathering together with people, I like try to get the time, I try to like ask, like if someone's not responding, I try to check in with them directly, each of these things, like just to kind of communicate well, right? But then like I realized that when things don't work out, that I would just stress out about it, and these people aren't always responsive. So I was like, okay, I mean, I'll still plan for things, but I'll give these people like a wide berth, because I've seen that even when plans fall through, in the past I might have been upset, but I've seen that many times when they do fall through, I ended up doing something better with that time, and God and the Holy Spirit led me to a different path. So instead I was like, okay, like if it works out, then according to my plan, then fine. But if it doesn't work out, then there might have been something better. Or, and if there's nothing memorable in that time, maybe God used that time in a different way to allow something different to happen. So instead, my prayers lately have been about that, and about asking Him to work in my life and in the lives of all the people whose names came up today, like from our trip to Korea, and for everyone on the MSD 117.8 too. I know that I'll be able to meet more and more of you going forward in the future. And lately, I like reconnected with some of the members of the Hawaii church. I'm speaking more and with the church members here, with Pastor Sky, and with all the guys on the man cave and such too. And each of these people have played this kind of role, and we like are part of the providence that God is acting in each other's lives to lead us to a golden path, right? And so I really hope that everyone can keep that in mind for this week, to really see like, okay, we have to love these people because God loves us through these people, even the people who hate us, even the people who wreak havoc in our lives. And so I really hope that everyone can practice this week, and that this can be kind of this very hopeful and powerful like ember and a seed that will like sprout into a grand tree or into a fire that will motivate us and push us into the future.
And thank you, Eddie, for another wonderful episode of 2G Talks. And it is amazing to see how far we've come, that we have second gen already in their 30s, which is quite amazing and awesome. But I'm super thankful because they are the future, and I hope that we can raise more and more of these second gen that are doing such an amazing job, all right? So there it is, guys. That is today's Monday podcast. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. Have an amazing and awesome Monday, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the